Okay, that was what I was supposed to do. You do take fall damage.
So I mentioned in the Grimlord video weeks and weeks back I've been meaning to do this for a while now. Hubris launched on December 7th of last year and I was ready to do a video on it, but for one reason or another it just never happened. Maybe I was burnt out of covering new games at the time, because in November of last year I looked at Sonic Frontiers, God of War Ragnarok, and Evil West. But looking back now, this was probably for the best. There were many complaints lobbied at the game from what I gather. Boring combat, low enemy variety, a story that wasn't anything to write home about, and voice acting that did said story no favors. I saw these reviews and thought, you know what, maybe it's best that I do skip out on Hubris. But I kept it in my wish list, and recently I saw that it received a 2.0 update, an update that aims to fix pretty much all the issues that early adopters had. Even going so far as to re-record dialogue for the main protagonist. Now that is some dedication. So now my curiosity is piqued. Is Hubris now one of the VR greats thanks to this new update? I feel like there's no better time to find out than now, so if you're ready, let's do this. Our story begins as the Order of Objectivity, or OOO, welcomes their new recruit, or you. A mission comes in to head down to the Twin Planet system and find the missing agent Cyanna. So along with your ship's captain, who is a drone with a speaker for most of the game, you venture down to the planet to check it out. Not too long into the adventure, we come across an operations engineer named Duak. He's actually been in contact with Agent Cyanna and eventually helps to track her down. Cyanna tells about the Uron, the invaders that have come down to this planet looking for something. But after this, Agent Cyanna, Duak, and the recruit all work together to take out the Uron ship and save the day. It's an incredibly simple story, and I would love to say that it's saved by interesting characters or cool set pieces, but that's not the case either. I was waiting the entire time for some big twist to happen, like maybe one of these three characters would end up betraying you or go rogue for the greater good, but that never happened. The Captain Lady drone thing is literally just a guide character. She adds nothing to the story that brings forth any intrigue or mystery. She is just there to help convey the most boring, deep lore information to the player, and I couldn't be bothered, man.
But she seemed to know a lot about the invaders, which she called Ron.
That makes sense, I guess. Right, recruit? It's the same name I found in the OOO database, remember?
Duak is an engineer dude who helps you along the journey. There were a few moments that were almost something interesting, but they just never take advantage of it. He mentions how he has cyan extractors on this planet, which, according to the drone lady, are illegal. He starts stammering and saying, oh, they're not mine, but this never goes anywhere besides attempted comedy? Emphasis on attempted. Then there's this one moment where he's building this robot that Cyanna told him to, but he has to substitute this incredibly strong lightweight material for a heavier and weaker version without her knowing. I thought this was going to lead to an interesting interaction with him and Cyanna, where the blue-collar worker takes a shortcut that leads to trouble. But nope, this is just an excuse to have the robot shut down and be out of commission just in time for the player's big battle. And Cyanna doesn't comment on this at all, even after he admits it in front of the group. The robot is pretty cool though. When it first shows up, it looks like it's gonna be hostile and it intimidates the player, it jumps out at them. And then it even almost kills Duak, but nothing comes of that either. After Cyanna calms it down, it's overpowered and just on your team. It really makes me wonder what the entire purpose of that robot was, because yeah, it feels like it was just padding out the game time for the sake of it. Cyanna is probably the most disappointing of the bunch. She's got some sort of powers that she uses in a few moments throughout the game, but we don't learn anything about these powers. Drone Lady says something about her being born from cyan, but to the player who only knows cyan as a fucking color, that gives me no new information. So instead, I'm left wondering if everyone born from cyan is given a name with cyan in it. We have Cyanna? Is there a Cyannaline out there? How about Mary Cyan? The acting is pretty unremarkable as well. I know that one of the major revisions coming to 2.0 was re-recorded voice lines, but if this is the upgrade, I can only imagine what the original was like.
All right, get ready. Opening the holographic shield in 3, 2, 1. What's that sound? Stand back!
How about over here? You know how to kill bugs by now, so I'm pretty sure you got this. All right, get ready. Opening the holographic shield in 3, 2, 1. What's that sound? Stand back!
The new lines aren't bad takes, but they also aren't necessarily good. It comes across as amateurish still. Like someone who just doesn't have the experience to get emotions down and instead does an impression of an emotion. It sounds like it's a lot of these ladies and gentlemen's first time in the recording closet, if you know what I mean. And it's not this nice lady's fault that the Australian accent has been memeified by the internet.
No, it doesn't work. The batteries are too weak.
No.
There's a lot about this world that's cool, but the story doesn't ever go deep enough to give me the context to the world. I would love to know what the Triple O is, why they're being sent on this mission, what have they done before this, what is this planet I'm on, why do the bad guys want to be here? None of this basic stuff is explored, making it feel extremely bare bones. And if all that stuff is left up in the air, then you know the more minute details aren't going to be touched. Why can Cyanna mess with liquid's magnetic properties to allow me to walk on it? These things are cool in the moment, but that's about all it is. And that's a shame too, because the visuals telling this story are great. But I should stress something real quick. My VR setup is an OG HTC Vive Pro, complete with the original ones that have assuredly seen their fair share of battle scars from me smacking them into shit. But this was a problem for me because the Vive controllers are bugged in Hubris. I couldn't access the game's menu because none of the buttons on the controller open it up, meaning I couldn't increase the difficulty from medium to hard like I would have normally done, but most importantly, I couldn't change the graphics settings. I was stuck with whatever default settings the game put me at. The game still looked good, but even with an RTX 3080, I wasn't terribly impressed by what this game has to offer visually, and that sucks because I'm sure I would have if I'd been able to crank this game up to its max. With the settings I played on, whatever they were, the game looked pretty good. The obvious winners here are the water and foliage. The shaders they have for the tops of bodies of water is great. The opening area demonstrates this really well, and paired with the directional lighting and rock formations, it makes for a really great looking scene. Indoor areas are a little less impressive if you ask me. They're good, but not on the same level as the outdoor stuff. I believe it would get more glowing reviews from me if I could have turned up the settings, but it just doesn't look as sharp as it could otherwise. Like the resolution isn't as high as it could be or something. There are some really cool underwater sections, and again, I think these do a great job of showing what this game's strengths are visually. There are a few set pieces, and these are where the game really puts on a show, with the one that legitimately impressed me being at the very end.
Oh, wow.
But beyond the potentially pretty face that Hubris puts on, what does it have going for it? Well, let's talk about it. As a recruit of the Triple O, you're expected to be proficient in survival, making use of your surroundings and adapting to any scenario. This is mainly displayed through your ability to scavenge and repurpose materials from the world. Using your trusty hollow backpack, you can hold on to as many items as you can carry. You can then use those resources in 3D printers around the planet to accomplish many different needs. Health pickups are fruits here, so how do you get them? You mainly scavenge wildlife like alien mushrooms and roots, and then throw them into a 3D printer to remake them as fruit. Need to cross a longer than normal gap? Well, there just so happens to be this odd machine here that lets you take alien octopus tentacles and repurpose them into this jelly rope thing that we can use in these nodes. Before you know it, we're climbing across the chasm. Oh, but the best one is when you have to make a new battery.
Yes, it works! Now take the battery and put it in me. Oh, I mean the drone.
No, you said what you said.
Most of the time though, you'll spend your time with the printer upgrading your weapon. Exploration's main reward are materials for printing. I mentioned the wildlife you can use for health, but you can also find metal, plastic, fiber, and cyan in their raw forms. And each printing room also comes with a decomposition chamber. You'll open up your hollow backpack and one at a time unload these materials. Once it's filled, you'll close it and it'll turn these materials into resources. You then grab them and throw them into the printer. From there, you'll insert your standard pistol, giving you the option to upgrade the pistol's damage output and ammo count, or unlock the full auto and shotgun modes. You can upgrade them each 2 more times, maxing out at 3 upgrades each. I almost got them all maxed out with the SMG and shotguns getting 2 and the pistol getting 3. This is for the best though. The fully maxed out pistol is strong enough to take out most enemies in a single shot. You know what? Let's go ahead and tackle combat. So we have a pretty basic shooter on our hands here. You have access to the one gun throughout the entire adventure. You shoot with the trigger, and after you run out of ammo, you simply have to push the clip back in. But it doesn't even have to be your hand. You can hit it on the environment to reload it, or my favorite that I discovered later on, quickly pushing it into your chest. In the 1.0 release, the method of reloading was apparently just waiting a few seconds for the gun to reload itself. I know for a fact I would have hated this. While I would prefer something slightly more involved for a VR weapon, seeing as how I think reloading VR weapons is a big part of the fun in VR shooters, the clip actually having to be physically interacted with is a huge improvement over the 1.0 version. Earlier I mentioned the weapon can be given 2 different modes of fire, and this is where the combat shines the brightest. By double tapping the gun button, it will quickly transform into the next mode, making for some really cool quick swapping in dire scenarios. But I have a little gripe with this. I don't love the mode swapping method. You can double tap to cycle the weapon through its modes with that sick transformation, and it's really quick. You can start firing with the next method almost immediately, but it goes in a cycle. If you want to get directly to one of the other modes, but that's not the next one in the cycle, you can hold down the input to bring up the menu with all of the forms. This is pretty nice, but Half-Life Alyx has spoiled me. That game has a virtually identical system, except it's much faster. As soon as you hold the button, the menu pops up and you can swap guns. Vengeful Rites had a very similar system for changing magic disciplines. The speed at which you can change tactics here is key. Hubris's weapon wheel takes way too long to pull up, and this leads to moments where I'm stuck waiting on the game while the enemies are still advancing on me. It's faster to just cycle through the quick swap, going past the mode I don't want to use. While I do think the quick swapping is cool and I love seeing the animation again, the 3 modes don't really have much of a necessity in the combat sandbox. The pistol and the SMG are extremely similar as far as firepower and range goes. It's mostly personal preference on whether you like auto fire or semi-auto fire. Whichever your preference is what you should upgrade. There isn't a real reason to upgrade the other aside from just being curious. It is fun to have options, as I always say, but the shotgun is the only weapon I see as a worthwhile addition to the sandbox. The standard fire is your typical shotgun shit. It feels good to get up close and personal with enemies and use the advantage of VR by rounding corners or something like that. But by holding down the trigger, the shotgun will fire this slow-moving shot that's actually guided by the gun. And when it hits, it makes a small explosion. Its speed increases the longer it's active, so it becomes a little unruly, but it's a neat addition. Using it to take care of enemies hiding behind cover is fairly satisfying. But yeah, that's all you've got as far as combat goes. There's no melee options to speak of, so if you're not a fan of shooting and that's it, you'll probably be left a little disappointed. Enemy variety doesn't do a lot to help either. You're going to be fighting these same basic enemies for most of your time in Hubris. They have decent behavior for the most part, with them staying behind cover and peeking out every so often for you to get a shot in. But then it feels like there are times when I'm playing in a ranked Halo Infinite lobby with the way these guys walk extremely fast and constantly have their gun on you, like they are zeroed in and just zooming by you, and the player character doesn't move fast enough to react to this. Even the sprint function doesn't help. You just really feel it when these guys kick it into MLG Pro Gamer mode. It happened more than once, so I assume that's just a quirk of their AI. There are these larger enemies that have this huge laser that'll eat your health quick, but they walk so slowly, and if you keep them at a distance and hammer them with your weapon of choice, it's not a problem. There are these flying drones that'll hover above and rain down fire. They actually feel the best to take out if you ask me. There are these slow-moving landmine enemies that'll move closer to you and explode if you don't take them out in time. And there's a variant that has a shield. I like these a lot because you have to reach into your backpack and throw a battery at them to disrupt the shields. It feels really cool, and I wish there were more enemies that required some sort of resource to make them vulnerable, because that's a main part of the gameplay, right? Using the resources you scavenge on the planet to overcome impossible odds. I just think that could have been given more opportunities to shine. And then there are the small tick enemies that just run at you.
Now, take the gun and blast those creeps.
Lady, you do not know the situation I'm in right now. Just get the gun, 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 get the gun!
But they felt the most artificial. When going through the tick nest, you could clearly see them spawning right next to their little nests. It makes me think of the gun and how it just pops into your hand when you summon it. It looks unfinished, and things like this show a lack of visual polish that I think this game could use. But anyway, besides those squids that you have to destroy underwater, that's it on the enemies. They aren't bad, but every one of them are taken out in the same way, so the sandbox can't help but feel limited. Somewhere this game comes so close are in the arenas you fight in. They aren't breathtaking or anything, but there are multiple routes to take when fighting through them. It makes these not only feel like real places with believable architecture, but also fun maps to battle in. The outdoor compounds are good with the multiple ways to approach the enemies and even reach higher levels, but then the pinnacle of this design is in the final firefight, where it felt like I could have tackled this fight in multiple ways if I was to go back. I could have thrown batteries at these mine drones to disable them, but instead I climbed on this pipe and snuck past them. I could have gone straight down this walkway, but instead I ran across some pipes and used a ladder to get some height on these enemies. The arenas simply get better as the game goes on, which is way more obvious when you compare those great examples against this cleverly repurposed room. This place that was previously used for narrative set pieces and a puzzle is later turned into an arena. Cool, but the not so cool part is when I try to use this lift that was previously for progression to try to get some height advantage on the enemies like I did in that later fight. But now there's an invisible wall here which leaves me falling to my death. So yeah, when you put the arenas like these side by side, you can really see that the team just got better at designing them as the project went on.
Oh, yeah, I should have. I deserve that.
Other than combat though, gameplay involves a few different pace breakers. You have some basic platforming, which kind of surprised me, not gonna lie. If you use your sprint and jump, you can get some pretty sick airtime. They often ask you to do this in tandem with your climbing skills. Climbing is nothing new for VR games. The two go together like tacked on RPG mechanics and cracks to slip through in AAA games. But Hubris does have some entertaining ones. You can see my VR dorkiness come out a bit here, but I usually try to extend my arms all the way up so it feels like I'm really hanging from these things. Physically turning around so I can grab ledges behind me, I like this stuff, and I really like how you can use both hands to fling yourself over the ledge when you get to the top. Something I haven't seen in VR yet though is swimming, and this is actually pretty cool. To move underwater, you have to push the water away from your body to move in that direction. Fast, small, rapid strokes, they won't get you the most distance though. Slow, wide strokes are the way to do it. The opening of the game sees you killing octopi to get their tentacles, and you only need like 2, but I took my time exploring this little reef because it was so awesome. And this is the only kind of maze-like underwater section that the game asks you to explore. Every other underwater section is either a large open area or a linear tunnel. Swimming is easily one of the coolest features this game has going for it, but it's never pushed as far as I would like it.
Yes, you got it. Let's get it to Duac.
It's only ever used as another way to shake up combat, which isn't great because floating water fights never feel as good as grounded fights. All the enemies you encounter in the water just slowly move towards you, and you can always just turn around and swim away for a better shot. I would have loved more opportunities for just plain old exploration under the water. I mean, I'm on an alien planet and I'm allowed to breathe underwater indefinitely. Why am I not given more objectives that aren't just, oh, go find this thing underwater, or, oh, the only way forward is to go underwater? It could have used so much more variety. As previously mentioned, I like the little tentacle zip lines you can make to throw into the anchor points. There's a lot of little neat one-off ideas in Hubris that make the experience feel unique when they pop up. There's the small puzzle where you have to power up this water drainage system by charging these batteries. Using this soldering tool was pretty neat. The most unique one was administering first aid to Cyanna.
Whoa.
Easy now, that looks unstable.
Whoa, boo, boo, boo.
And throw it off the balcony.
Removing this barb thing and then running outside to throw it before it explodes was so cool. Then you have to go back and clean the wound and then seal it up. Then in this one cave section, there are these shelled creatures that I thought were going to be hostile, but no, turns out these are used as platforms that you have to ride. The water is poisonous and they have set paths they walk back and forth on. I like that this is here, but it's also the first and last time this concept is ever seen. It's like this with almost every one of these extra moments. They help to break up the gameplay with something more contextual, but nothing more. The ticks and those turtle creatures are programmed to be interested in fruit that the player throws. It plays some role in that first encounter with the ticks, and I didn't even use it, I just ran past them. but there could have easily been an encounter where the player needs to lure some kind of wildlife to a group of enemies or something like that. I really wish they were better implemented into the core mechanics. As it stands now, they're only momentary distractions with no real depth when they should have been given more opportunities to evolve and be a part of the real gameplay loop. I didn't even mention this hoverbike segment that kind of comes and goes out of nowhere, but that's exactly what I'm saying. These moments are here and then they're gone. Meanwhile, the game itself doesn't even stay around for very long. You know what it feels like? The whole game feels like a really long ride at Universal. You start out with this really long yet somehow still vague explanation of what your mission is. You then spend your time listening to these B-movie ass people deliver this bare bones plot to you. You participate in basic exploration to facilitate basic combat that honestly feels really cheap at points. Like this is on the same level as a light gun game you'd find at an arcade somewhere. Enemies are extremely artificial in their behavior and your strategies don't change from the first encounter to the last. And then after about 5-ish hours, it's over and you feel no more satisfied than you did when you started.
That just fell on our... Okay.
Even more so for me, since it's like I've been waiting in line for so long to play this, only to have it be over and done before it's really had a chance to get going. I'm sorry to say that this is one of the most middling experiences I've had in VR. If you're still not convinced, you can give it a try yourself, but I would definitely wait until it goes on sale, and I would also just stay away completely if you're using Vive wands. The game's biggest strength is putting the Unreal Engine on full blast in VR, and not having access to the graphics settings stops that from happening completely. There are much better VR titles out there, but if you need to satisfy that curiosity, you do you, man. Next time we see each other, it's a little up in the air. I really do want to go back to Bone Lab because I'm already in the mood for some VR, and I know it's really weird because the anniversary for Bone Lab came out and they said that they're not really working on any new content for the game. They're just trying to get the engine in a good shape. I think they haven't really discussed it, but I really think they're trying to get it ready to sell to people and license out so other people can make VR games that function and use the same kind of physics as Bone Lab does. And that's okay, they can do that, but it really leaves Bone Lab as a game kind of hung and dry. But I really do, I want to go back and see what the community has done in a year's time and check out some maps. I think that would be really fun. I am working on the Baldur's Gate 3 video as of now. I've got some of the script written. It's going well. It's going to be structured very differently than any other video I've done, even any of the RPG videos I've done, which is kind of scary. But I'm going to wait until I get done with my second playthrough, so that'll probably be around 200 hours in the game by the time I'm ready to actually make the video on that. But here's hoping. And then here's a weird one. I want to go back to Astral Chain. That game left me so mixed back in 2019, and I really, really want to go back to it and give it the DMC5 treatment, like the video I made last year about why DMC5 didn't click with me. I really think the Astral Chain has a lot of those same things, but it's just such an interesting thing thinking back to it because there are so many things that I like about that game, but there are also so many things wrong with it that I would love to dive into and see what they are and hopefully make it entertaining for you guys. But I don't know, all those things are in the works, possibly, potentially. But anyway, I appreciate you so much for watching. So thanks for stopping by and have a great day.